On my daughter's 9th birthday, my mother did something I will never forget. She walked up to Lily's gift, the one thing my little girl had been holding against her chest like a treasure, and she ripped it right out of her hands. Lily screamed. She tried to hold on, but my mother was stronger. She yanked it away so hard that my daughter fell backwards onto the grass. And then, before anyone could move, before I could even open my mouth, she raised that gift above her head and brought it down on the concrete patio with everything she had. The crash was so loud it echoed off the fence. Pieces flew everywhere. One of them hit a kid standing nearby. Children started crying. Parents were grabbing their phones, not sure if they should call someone. My daughter was on the ground, looking up at her grandmother with an expression I hope I never see on her face again. It wasn't fear, it wasn't sadness. It was the look of a child who just realized that someone she loved wanted to hurt her. My mother stood over the broken pieces, chest heaving, and when she looked at me, she didn't look sorry. She looked scared. Not of me, not of what she'd done. She looked scared of what was inside that box. I didn't understand it then. I thought she was just being cruel, being the same controlling woman she'd always been. But 3 days later, when I was picking up the last of the broken pieces from the patio, I found something hidden inside that gift. Something that explained everything. Something worth more than my mother's house, her car, and every lie she had ever told me, combined. And that's when I realized she didn't break that gift out of anger. She broke it because she didn't want me to find what was inside. Hi everyone, I'm Emily. I'm 38 years old and I'm a pediatric ER nurse in Chicago. What I'm about to tell you happened on my daughter Lily's 9th birthday. But to really understand it, you need to know a few things about my life first. I'm a single mom. I've been one for almost 5 years now. My divorce wasn't dramatic, no screaming, no fighting over money. We just fell apart. He moved to Denver, sends a check every month, calls Lily on Sundays. That's about it. So it's just me and her, and honestly, that's enough. I work night shifts, sometimes back to back. I've held dying children in my arms at 3 in the morning and then come home to make pancakes for my daughter like nothing happened. That's the job. You learn to separate the two worlds, or you don't survive. Lily is my reason for everything. She's smart, she's funny, she's got this quiet strength that I wish I had at her age. She doesn't complain. She doesn't ask for much. When I miss her school play because I'm stuck in the ER, she just hugs me when I get home and whispers, "It's okay, Mom. You were saving someone. That kid breaks my heart in the best way possible." Now, my family. That's a different story. My mother, Diane, has always had opinions about my life. Loud ones. According to her, I married the wrong man, picked the wrong career, and I'm raising my daughter the wrong way. My older sister Rachel is the golden child. Married a banker, lives in a 6-bedroom house in Lake Forest, drives a car that costs more than my annual salary. In my mother's eyes, Rachel is what I should have been. They've never been kind to Lily either. Last Thanksgiving, my mother told my daughter that her shoes looked cheap in front of the whole family. Lily didn't say a word the entire drive home. After that, I swore I wouldn't invite them to anything again. But when Lily's birthday came around, she looked at me with those big brown eyes and asked, "Can Grandma come this time?" So I gave them another chance. Looking back, that decision was the first mistake that led to everything falling apart. They didn't come to celebrate, they came to judge. I knew it the second my mother stepped out of Rachel's white Mercedes and looked at my house like she was inspecting a crime scene. I'd spent the whole morning setting up the backyard. Balloons, streamers, a handmade banner that Lily and I painted together the night before. It said "Happy 9th birthday Lily" in purple and gold, her favorite colors. I thought it looked beautiful. My mother walked through the front door, didn't say hello, didn't hug Lily, didn't even acknowledge the decorations. She just stood in the middle of my living room, ran her finger along the bookshelf, and looked at the dust on her fingertip. She turned to Rachel and said loud enough for me to hear, "Some things never change." Rachel laughed. Not a real laugh. That sharp, short laugh she does when she wants you to know she's above you. She walked in wearing a white linen dress and heels that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her husband Mark stayed in the car for 10 minutes, finishing a phone call, because apparently even my daughter's birthday wasn't important enough to put the phone down. When he finally came in, he shook my hand like I was a business associate and said with a stiff smile, "Nice place, Emily. Very cozy." I knew what cozy meant. It meant small. It meant not enough. My mother settled into the one good chair I had in the backyard, the cushioned one I'd bought specifically so she'd be comfortable, and immediately started commenting on everything. She looked around the yard, pointed at the folding tables I'd set up, and said to Rachel in that voice she uses when she wants to sound concerned but is really just being cruel, "She's using plastic tablecloths. I hope she at least got real plates." She didn't. I used paper plates. Because I'm a single mom on a nurse's salary throwing a birthday party for 15 kids, and that's what I could afford. Rachel's daughter Madison, who's 11, showed up in a brand new dress and immediately told Lily that her birthday outfit looked like something from a thrift store. Lily was wearing a purple dress we'd picked out together at Target. She loved that dress. She'd tried it on 3 times in the store and twirled in front of the mirror like a princess. After Madison's comment, she stopped twirling. I watched my daughter spend the next hour trying to impress them. She brought my mother a plate of food she'd helped me prepare. My mother took one look at it and pushed it aside without touching it, then said flatly, "I'm not hungry." Lily brought her a cup of lemonade. My mother took a sip, made a face, and set it down on the grass. Lily showed Madison her room, her books, her drawings. Madison scrolled through her phone the whole time and muttered, "Cool, I guess." Every time Lily tried, she got nothing back. And every time she got nothing back, I could see a little piece of her light go out. I wanted to say something. I wanted to grab my mother by the arm and tell her that if she couldn't be kind to a 9-year-old on her birthday, she could get back in that Mercedes and leave. But I didn't. Because part of me, the part that grew up in that woman's house, the part that spent 30 years trying to earn a compliment that never came, that part of me was still hoping she'd change. That maybe today would be different. That maybe she'd look at Lily and see what I see. A kind, beautiful, incredible little girl who deserves to be loved without conditions. She didn't. None of them did. The party went on. Kids played in the yard. Other parents chatted and laughed. And my family sat in their little corner like they were waiting for something better to come along. And then the package arrived. The moment Lily opened that box, everything felt right again. But let me back up. About 20 minutes before the cake, a delivery truck pulled up in front of my house. The driver walked up to the gate carrying a brown package, not very big, maybe the size of a shoebox. He looked at his clipboard and asked me, "Emily Carter?" I nodded. He handed me the box and a manila envelope stapled to the side. The return address was from a law firm I'd never heard of. Hartfield and Associates, Springfield, Illinois. I didn't know any lawyers in Springfield. I almost set it aside to open later, but Lily came running over when she saw the package. She tugged on my arm and said with her eyes wide, "Is that for me, Mom?" I looked at the envelope. It was addressed to Lily Carter, on the occasion of her 9th birthday. I opened the envelope first. Inside was a letter, handwritten on thick ivory paper, the kind you don't see anymore. The handwriting was shaky but careful, like someone had taken a long time to write every word. It was from my grandmother. My father's mother. Great-Grandma Ruth. She passed away almost 2 years ago at 91. I hadn't been close to her in recent years, mostly because my mother made it difficult for me to visit. But when I was little, Grandma Ruth was my favorite person in the world. She used to let me sit on her lap and wind up this little music box she kept on her dresser. It played Claire de Lune and had a tiny porcelain ballerina that spun inside. I used to think it was the most magical thing I'd ever seen. The letter said that she'd arranged this gift before she passed. She'd asked her lawyer to deliver it to Lily on her 9th birthday, the same age I was when she first showed me the music box. She wrote that she wanted Lily to have something beautiful from her great-grandmother, something to remind her that she came from a long line of strong women who loved fiercely, even when love wasn't easy. I was already crying before I finished reading. I handed the box to Lily and watched her open it. Inside, wrapped in blue velvet cloth, was a music box. Not the same one from Grandma Ruth's dresser, this one was even more beautiful. It was made of dark polished wood, with hand-carved roses along the edges. The lid had a small golden clasp, and when Lily opened it, a tiny ballerina began to spin, and the melody of Claire de Lune filled the backyard. Lily's face lit up in a way I hadn't seen all day. She held the music box with both hands like it was alive, like it might fly away if she let go. She looked up at me, and whispered with tears forming in her little eyes, "Mom, it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." The other kids gathered around. Even some of the parents came over to look. Everyone was smiling. For the first time that day, the party felt like a real celebration. Lily sat down on the porch steps and just watched the ballerina spin, listening to the music with this peaceful look on her face, like the rest of the world had disappeared, and it was just her and that little dancer. I sat next to her and put my arm around her. I thought about Grandma Ruth, about how even after she was gone, she still found a way to make my daughter smile. I thought about all those afternoons on her lap, watching that ballerina spin, feeling safe and loved and enough. I thought about how my mother never once made me feel that way. And for a few minutes, none of it mattered. Not my mother's comments. Not Rachel's smirks. Not Madison's cruelty. Just me and my daughter and a gift from a woman who loved us from the other side. Lily looked up at me, still holding the music box against her chest, and said softly, "Can I keep it forever, Mom?" I kissed the top of her head and told her with my voice breaking, "It's yours, baby. Nobody's ever going to take it from you." I meant that with everything I had. I believed it when I said it, but I was wrong. Because not 2 minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. I turned around, and my mother was standing right there, staring at the music box in Lily's hands. Her expression had changed. The boredom was gone. The superiority was gone. What I saw in her eyes was something I'd never seen before. It was hunger. Until my mother stepped forward. "Ard!" I saw her eyes change, and I knew something was wrong. My mother didn't walk toward Lily. She moved toward her. There's a difference. Walking is casual. What my mother did was targeted, like a predator, locking onto something it wants. She stopped right in front of Lily and looked down at the music box. Her jaw was tight. Her hands were opening and closing at her sides. Lily noticed her and smiled. Still innocent, still trusting. She held the music box up and said with pure excitement in her voice, "Look, Grandma. Great-Grandma Ruth sent this to me. It plays music and everything." My mother didn't smile. She didn't say how lovely or "That's nice, sweetheart." She reached down and grabbed the music box with both hands. Lily's fingers were still wrapped around it. My daughter's smile disappeared. She looked confused, then scared. She held on tighter and said with her voice starting to shake, "Grandma, what are you doing?" My mother pulled harder. Her voice came out low and sharp like a blade. "Give it to me, now." I was on my feet in a second. I stepped forward and said firmly, "Mom, let go. That's Lily's gift." She didn't even look at me. Her eyes were locked on the box. She pulled again, harder this time, and Lily cried out. The little girl was gripping it with everything she had, her knuckles white, her arms trembling. Rachel appeared from behind me and put her hand on my shoulder. She leaned in close and said in a calm, almost rehearsed tone, "Emily, just let her see it. Don't make a scene." I shoved her hand off. I said through my teeth, "Get your hand off me." My mother twisted the music box sideways, trying to break Lily's grip. Lily screamed, "Mommy, she's hurting me." That word, "mommy," hit me like a bullet. I lunged forward and grabbed my mother's wrists. I looked her dead in the eyes and said in a voice I didn't recognize, Let go of her right now, or I swear to God I will make you. For 1 second, everything froze. My mother looked at me, really looked at me, like she was calculating something. Then, she did something I will never forgive. She shoved Lily, not gently, not accidentally. She put her hand on my daughter's chest and pushed her backward. Lily fell off the porch step and landed hard on her back on the grass. Her head hit the ground, and for 1 horrible second she didn't move. The music box came free. My mother held it in both hands, breathing hard, her face red. She looked at it, turned it over, examined the bottom, shook it like she was looking for something. Then she looked at me with this twisted expression and spat out the words, "I knew it. I knew that old woman was hiding something. She always did. Always scheming, always leaving things for people who don't deserve them." I was kneeling beside Lily, checking her head, checking her eyes. She was conscious, staring up at the sky, completely silent. No crying, no screaming. Just silence. That scared me more than anything. I stood up and reached for the music box. My mother pulled it away from me and said with venom in her voice, "You have no idea what this is, do you? You're just as clueless as you've always been." I said slowly, every word like a nail, "Give me my daughter's gift. Now." She laughed. It wasn't a real laugh. It was bitter, ugly, full of something rotten. She shook her head and said with conturn not, "For a no, a nur, and over a nur, a nur, a nur, a nur." I screamed, "No!" But she was faster. She brought it down on the concrete edge of the patio with a sickening crack. The wood split open. The golden clasp flew off and landed somewhere in the grass. The tiny porcelain ballerina shattered into a dozen pieces that scattered across the ground like broken teeth. The music stopped mid-note. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I looked down at the wreckage, pieces of dark wood, shards of porcelain, torn blue velvet. The little winding mechanism lay on its side, bent and useless. Grandma Ruth's gift, her love letter from beyond the grave, was destroyed. I looked at Lily. She had pulled herself up to sitting. She was staring at the broken pieces on the ground. Her hands were in her lap. Her face was completely blank. No tears, no sound, nothing. She looked like someone had reached inside her and turned off the lights. My mother was standing over the mess, chest heaving, fists still clenched. Rachel was behind her, arms crossed, and I swear I saw the faintest trace of a smile on her lips. The other parents were gathering their children, moving quickly toward the gate, not looking at me. The party was over. Everything was over. I looked at my mother one last time. The woman who raised me. The woman whose approval I had spent my entire life chasing. And I felt something inside me finally, completely, irreversibly break. Not my heart. Something deeper than that. The cord that connected me to her, the invisible thread that made me keep coming back, keep forgiving, keep hoping, it snapped. And when it did, I felt nothing. That was the moment I stopped being her daughter. "Get out of my house. Now." The words came out of me quiet and steady, which surprised even me. I expected to scream. I expected to cry. But what came out was something colder than anger. It was a decision. My mother blinked. For a second, she looked caught off guard, like she hadn't expected consequences. She straightened up, brushed off her blouse like she'd just bumped into a table, and said with that dismissive tone she'd perfected over decades, "Oh, stop being dramatic, Emily. You're making a scene in front of all these people." I stepped closer, close enough that she could see my face clearly. I said again, slower this time. I said, "Get out. Take Rachel. Take Mark. Take Madison. And don't ever come back to this house." Rachel uncrossed her arms and stepped forward. She put on her mediator voice, that calm, condescending tone she uses when she wants everyone to think she's the reasonable one. She tilted her head and said smoothly, "Emily, come on. You're overreacting. It was just a box. Mom was just curious. You know how she gets." I turned to her. I could feel my pulse in my temples, but I kept my voice flat. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Your mother just threw my 9-year-old daughter to the ground and smashed her birthday gift in front of 20 people. If you call that curiosity one more time, I will call the police and let them decide what to call it." That shut her up for about 5 seconds. Then she tried another angle. She softened her expression and said gently, like she was talking to a child, "You're upset, I get it, but think about what you're doing right now. You're going to cut off your own family over a music box? Think about Lily, she needs her grandmother." I almost laughed. I pointed at Lily, who was still sitting on the grass, completely motionless, staring at the broken pieces in front of her. I said with my voice cracking for the first time, "Look at her, Rachel. Look at what your mother did to my child. Does that look like a little girl who needs her grandmother?" Rachel glanced at Lily, then looked away quickly. She didn't have an answer for that. My mother did, though. She always had something to say. She grabbed her purse from the chair and pointed her finger at me. Her hand was shaking. Not from guilt, from rage. She narrowed her eyes and hissed at me. "You listen to me. That old woman had no right to send anything to this family. Everything she had should have come to me. Me. Not you, not your daughter, not anyone else. I am her son's wife. I earned my place in that family. And if you think some dead woman's little box is worth more than your own mother, then you deserve exactly the life you've got." She looked around my backyard, at the deflated balloons, the paper plates, the folding chairs, and said with a cruel smile, You deserve this." Something inside me went completely still. No anger, no pain, just clarity. I walked to the side gate and opened it wide. I stood there holding it and said without raising my voice, "Leave." My mother stared at me for a long moment. Then she turned and walked through the gate without looking back. Rachel followed, pulling Madison by the hand. Mark trailed behind them, already on his phone again, like the whole thing was just an inconvenience between meetings. I watched the white Mercedes pull away from the curb. I watched it disappear around the corner. And then I closed the gate. The backyard was empty now. Paper cups rolling in the breeze, half-eaten cake on the table, streamers hanging limp from the fence, and my daughter, still sitting on the ground, surrounded by broken pieces of the only gift that had made her smile all day. I walked over to her and sat down on the grass beside her. I didn't say anything. I just sat there. After a long time, she leaned into me and rested her head against my arm. We stayed like that until the sun went down. But the real damage wasn't the broken box. It wasn't the party. It wasn't even my mother's words. It was what it did to my daughter. She didn't cry, and that scared me more than anything. That night, after I cleaned up the backyard, after I threw away the paper plates and the smashed cake and the streamers that nobody cared about anymore, I went to check on Lily. She was in her room, sitting on the edge of her bed, still wearing her purple dress. Her shoes were still on. She hadn't changed, hadn't moved, hadn't done any of the things a 9-year-old normally does after a party. She was just sitting there, hands folded in her lap, staring at the wall. I sat down next to her. I brushed the hair out of her face and said softly, "Hey baby, how are you feeling?" She didn't answer right away. She kept staring at the wall like she was looking at something I couldn't see. Then, in a voice so small it barely made it across the room, she asked me, "Mom, why did Grandma do that?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. What was I supposed to say? How do you explain to a child that her own grandmother cared more about what might be inside a box than about her? How do you tell a 9-year-old that some people only see value in things they can take? I swallowed hard and said the only honest thing I could think of. "I don't know, sweetheart, but it had nothing to do with you. None of it was your fault." She nodded slowly, like she was processing something too heavy for her age. Then she looked up at me, and what I saw in her eyes made my chest cave in. It wasn't sadness. It was understanding. The kind of understanding no child should have. She had figured it out on her own. She knew her grandmother didn't love her. "Not the way grandmothers are supposed to," she said quietly, almost like she was talking to herself. She didn't even say happy birthday to me. I pulled her into my arms and held her so tight I could feel her heartbeat against mine. She didn't cry. She just leaned into me and breathed, slow and steady, like she was trying to hold herself together. I was the one who cried. I buried my face in her hair and let the tears come, silent and hot, because I didn't want her to hear. I cried for the party she didn't get, for the dress she'll never want to wear again, for the way she tried so hard to make them proud, and got nothing in return, for every time my family made her feel like she wasn't enough. And I cried because I knew this was my fault. I was the one who invited them. I was the one who gave them another chance. I was the one who opened the door and let the wolves walk in, knowing exactly what they were. Lily fell asleep in my arms that night. I carried her to bed, pulled the blanket up to her chin, and stood in the doorway watching her breathe. She looked so small, so breakable. I made a promise to myself right there. No more chances. No more hoping they'll change. No more letting my daughter pay the price for my inability to let go of people who never deserved us. I turned off her light and walked back to the living room. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I sat down on the couch and just stared at the floor for a while. Then I remembered the mess on the patio. I hadn't picked up all the pieces of the music box yet. I grabbed a bag and went outside with a flashlight. The night air was cool and still. I knelt down on the concrete and started picking up the fragments one by one. Pieces of dark wood, shards of porcelain, a bent hinge, the torn velvet lining. And then, as I lifted a piece of the broken base, I noticed something strange. After years in emergency rooms, you learn to notice what others miss. You learn to see the thing that doesn't belong, the bruise that's too symmetrical, the story that doesn't match the injury, the detail everyone else overlooks. And right now, kneeling on my patio at 11 o'clock at night with a flashlight in one hand and a broken piece of wood in the other, I noticed something that didn't belong. The base of the music box was too thick. I turned the piece over in my hands. The wood was maybe 1.5 inches at the bottom, but the interior of the box had been shallow, maybe 1/2 inch deep. That left a full inch of wood unaccounted for. I ran my finger along the edge and felt a seam. Not a crack from the impact. A seam. Deliberate, precise, like someone had built it that way on purpose. My heart started beating faster. I grabbed another piece of the base and fit it together with the first one like a puzzle. The seam continued across both pieces. I could see it now, a thin line running along the entire bottom of the box, separating the base into 2 layers. A false bottom. I went inside and got a butter knife. I came back out, knelt under the porch light, and carefully worked the blade into the seam. It resisted at first, then gave way with a soft click. The bottom layer separated, and inside was a narrow compartment, no deeper than 1/4 inch, lined with the same blue velvet as the rest of the box. Inside that compartment were 3 things. The first was a small brass key, old-fashioned, with an ornate handle shaped like a rose. It was heavy for its size and polished to a warm glow. The second was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age, with handwriting I recognized instantly. Grandma Ruth's handwriting. The same shaky but careful letters from the birthday note. The third was a white card, stiff and official-looking, with a string of numbers printed across the front. It looked like a bank account number. I sat down on the porch step and unfolded the letter. It was short, barely 1/2 page, but every word hit me like a freight train. It read, "My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, then the music box has done its job. It found its way to you and to your little girl, just as I planned. I want you to know that I have watched you struggle, and I have watched you fight, and I have never once been disappointed in you. You are the strongest woman in this family, even if no one ever told you that. The key in this box belongs to a safe deposit box at First Heritage Bank in Springfield, Illinois. The account number is on the card. Everything inside that box is for Lily. I set it aside years ago, long before I got sick, because I knew there would come a day when you would need it. I didn't tell anyone, not your father before he passed, not Diane. Especially not Diane. She would have found a way to take it, just like she took everything else. This is between you and me, sweetheart. Go to the bank. Show them the key and the account number. They will know what to do. And Emily, please don't feel guilty about this. You earned it by being the kind of mother I always wished I could have been. Take care of that little girl. She reminds me so much of you. All my love, always. Ruth. I read the letter 3 times. By the 3rd time, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. I looked at the key in my palm. I looked at the account number on the card. And I thought about my mother standing over that broken music box, shaking it, examining the bottom, saying I knew that old woman was hiding something. She knew, maybe not exactly what was inside, but she knew Grandma Ruth had kept something from her. That's why she flew into a rage. That's why she ripped the box out of Lily's hands. That's why she smashed it. She wasn't angry about a music box. She was looking for this. Whatever was in that safe deposit box, my mother had been hunting for it, maybe for years. And Grandma Ruth had outsmarted her from beyond the grave. I sat on that porch step for a long time, holding the key and the letter and the card, listening to the crickets and the distant sound of traffic. I thought about calling someone. A friend. A lawyer. Anyone. But I didn't. Not yet. I put everything in an envelope, sealed it, and hid it in the back of my closet behind a stack of old scrubs. Then I went to bed. I didn't sleep. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what Grandma Ruth had said, especially not Diane. She would have found a way to take it, just like she took everything else. 3 days later, I walked into a bank in Springfield, Illinois, and everything changed. What the bank manager told me made everything make sense. I drove to Springfield on a Wednesday morning. I told the hospital I needed a personal day, dropped Lily off at her friend Sophie's house, and got on the highway before the sun was fully up. The drive took about 3.5 hours. I spent every minute of it gripping the steering wheel and running through scenarios in my head. Maybe it was a few $1,000s. Maybe some old jewelry. Maybe just sentimental things. Photo albums or family documents. I told myself not to get my hopes up. I told myself it didn't matter what was inside. Grandma Ruth had already given me enough just by writing that letter. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking. First Heritage Bank was a small building on a quiet street downtown. Red brick, white columns, the kind of bank that looks like it's been there since the Civil War. I walked in carrying the key, the account card, and a copy of Lily's birth certificate, because I figured they'd want proof of who I was. The woman at the front desk directed me to the bank manager, a man named Gerald Patterson. He was in his 60s, gray hair, reading glasses on a chain around his neck. He looked like the kind of man who'd been sitting behind that desk for 30 years. I handed him the key and the card. He looked at the account number, typed something into his computer, and then went very still. He took off his glasses, looked at me over the desk, and said carefully, choosing every word, "Mrs. Carter, are you aware of the nature of this account?" I shook my head. He studied me for a moment, like he was deciding how much to say. Then he stood up and said gently, "Please come with me." He led me down a narrow hallway to the vault. He used the key and a second key of his own to open a large safe deposit box. Inside were several manila envelopes, a leather folder, and a small wooden chest. He carried everything to a private room and set it on the table in front of me. Then he sat down across from me and said in a tone that was both professional and kind, "Your grandmother, Ruth Mitchell, opened this account in 2014. She named Lily Carter as the sole beneficiary, with you, Emily Carter, as the custodial trustee until Lily turns 18. She was very specific about her wishes." He opened the leather folder and showed me the documents inside. There was a trust agreement, notarized and witnessed, dated 9 years ago, right around the time Lily was born. There were investment statements, bank records, and a handwritten addendum in Grandma Ruth's writing. Gerald explained everything clearly. Grandma Ruth had quietly built a trust over the last decade of her life. She had sold a piece of farmland she'd inherited from her own parents, land that nobody in the family knew she still owned. She had invested the proceeds carefully, conservatively, letting it grow year after year without touching it. The total value of the trust, as of that morning, was just over $860,000. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stared at the number on the statement and tried to make it real in my brain. $860,000. For Lily. Gerald gave me a moment. Then he opened one of the manila envelopes and slid a second set of documents across the table. His expression changed. He hesitated before he spoke, then said in a lower voice, "Mrs. Carter, there's something else you should know. About 14 months ago, a woman came to this bank with documents claiming to be the authorized representative of Ruth Mitchell's estate. She presented a power of attorney, a death certificate, and a notarized letter requesting full access to this account." My stomach dropped. I asked him, barely above a whisper, "Who was she?" He looked at me with an expression that told me he already knew this would hurt. He said quietly, "Her name was Rachel Whitfield. My sister," Gerald continued. He told me that Rachel had come in with a full set of legal documents, all of them convincing enough to pass a first inspection. She had a forged power of attorney that listed her as the executor of Grandma Ruth's estate. She had a notarized letter, also forged, claiming that the trust had been dissolved and the funds should be released to the family. She even had a letter supposedly signed by me, authorizing the transfer. All fake. Gerald said the only reason it didn't work was because Grandma Ruth had anticipated it. When she set up the trust, she added a security clause that required in-person verification with 2 forms of government ID from either me or Lily before any funds could be released. Rachel didn't know about that clause. When the bank asked for additional verification, she got flustered, made an excuse, and left. They flagged the account and reported the incident to their fraud department, but because no funds were actually taken, it didn't go further. I sat there in that small room with the fluorescent lights buzzing above me, staring at the forged documents my own sister had used to try to steal my daughter's inheritance. And suddenly, my mother's rage at the birthday party wasn't random anymore. She knew about the money. Maybe not the exact amount, but she knew Grandma Ruth had hidden something. And when that music box arrived, addressed to Lily, from Grandma Ruth's lawyer, she panicked. She thought the secret was inside the box. She thought if she got to it first, she could take it before I ever knew it existed. She wasn't angry. She was desperate. And Rachel, my perfect, successful, golden child sister, had already tried to steal it through forgery and fraud 14 months before the music box ever arrived. They were both in on it, and they both failed. Because a 91-year-old woman, who loved me more than my own mother ever did, had thought of everything. They didn't apologize. They blamed me. The calls started the same night I got back from Springfield. My mother called first. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was sharp, controlled, the way it always is when she's trying to sound like the victim. She said in a clipped tone, "Emily, I don't know what that old woman put in your head, but whatever she left behind belongs to this family. Not to you, not to your daughter, to this family. Call me back. We need to talk about this, like adults." I deleted it. Rachel called 20 minutes later. No voicemail. She called again. And again. Then she switched to texting. The first message was casual, almost friendly. "Hey, can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding." The second one, an hour later, dropped the mask. "Emily, I know you went to the bank. Whatever Gerald told you, it's not what you think. I was trying to protect the family's assets. That money was supposed to go through probate." The third one came at midnight. "If you try to keep that money, I will hire a lawyer and I will drag you through court so fast your head will spin. You think you can just take what doesn't belong to you? Think again." I screenshot every message. I saved every voicemail. And the next morning I called a lawyer of my own. Her name was Dana Moretti. She was a family attorney, a colleague at the hospital recommended. I sat in her office with the trust documents, the forged papers Gerald had given me copies of, and my phone full of Rachel's threats. Dana looked through everything carefully. When she finished, she set the papers down and looked at me with raised eyebrows. She said plainly, "Your sister committed fraud. Forgery of a power of attorney is a felony in Illinois. She also attempted to commit theft by deception. You have more than enough to press charges." She paused, then added in a quieter tone, "But I want you to understand what that means. Criminal charges against a family member, court dates, depositions. Your daughter might have to be involved. It could take years." I sat with that for a long time. I thought about Lily. I thought about what another year of conflict would do to her. I thought about courtrooms and lawyers and holidays ruined by subpoenas. And I made my decision. I told Dana I didn't want to press charges. She looked surprised, but didn't argue. Instead, we filed a formal fraud report with the bank, put a legal lock on the trust account with additional security measures, and sent Rachel a cease and desist letter that made it very clear. If she or anyone acting on her behalf attempted to access the account again, criminal charges would be filed immediately, no second warning. The letter also named my mother as a co-conspirator, based on her behavior at the party, and her voicemail admitting she believed the inheritance belonged to her. After the cease and desist was delivered, the calls didn't stop. They got worse. My mother left a voicemail at 2 a.m, her voice raw and bitter. She said with venom I had never heard from her before, "You are dead to me, Emily. You hear me? Dead. You chose a dead woman over your own mother. I hope you're proud of yourself." Rachel's husband, Mark, called my work and tried to speak to my supervisor. He told them I was involved in a family legal dispute and suggested it might affect my job performance. My supervisor told him to contact the hospital's legal department and hung up. After that, I changed my phone number. I blocked every email address I had for them. I told Lily's school that under no circumstances were my mother or my sister authorized to pick her up. I changed the locks on my front door. I did everything I could think of to build a wall between my daughter and the people who were supposed to love her. But cutting them off came with a cost I didn't expect. 2 months have passed since that birthday, and my life looks completely different now. The house is quieter. No unexpected visits. No phone calls that make my stomach clench. No holidays spent bracing for the next insult. It's peaceful in a way I didn't know was possible, but it's also lonely in a way I wasn't prepared for. Lily is getting better. Slowly. She started seeing a therapist a few weeks after the party, a kind woman named Dr. Owens, who specializes in children. Lily doesn't talk much about what happened, but some nights she still asks me, "Mom, do you think Grandma ever loved me? Even a little bit?" I never know what to say to that. I just hold her and tell her she is loved more than she will ever know. She still has nightmares sometimes. She wakes up and comes to my room and crawls into bed beside me without saying a word. I hold her until she falls back asleep. The music box is gone, but I kept the letter from Grandma Ruth. I framed it and hung it in Lily's room, right next to her bed, so it's the last thing she sees before she closes her eyes. She reads it sometimes before she falls asleep. I think it helps. There is one thing I didn't expect. Lily still talks to her cousin Ethan, Rachel's younger son. He's 10, a sweet kid who had nothing to do with any of this. They FaceTime on weekends sometimes. I let her. Because punishing a child for what his mother did isn't something I'm willing to do. As for Rachel, I didn't sue her. Some people think I should have. Maybe they're right. But I decided that protecting my peace was more important than proving a point in court. The money is safe. Lily's future is secure. And for the first time in my life, I don't owe my family anything. I used to think that cutting off your own mother was the worst thing a person could do. Now I know the worst thing is letting your child grow up believing she deserves to be treated that way. If you're in a situation like mine, I want you to know something. Boundaries aren't selfish. They're survival. Would you have cut off your own mother in my place? Let me know what you think. I read every comment.